Hi, welcome to From Kitchen to Keepsake, Create Your Family's Recipe Legacy. I'm Heather and I'm an Associate Marketing Manager here at Storied. And today we're going to talk about recipes and how you can create those on Storied and even create cookbooks as a kind of a legacy heirloom keepsake for your loved ones. So we're going to talk about gathering recipes, adding the stories behind the recipes, some photo ideas that you can use for your recipes, especially if you want to do something other than food, bringing your cookbook to life with Storied, and then some recipe book inspiration. So let's get started. I love this thought. Recipes, they're more than just food. They're stories, traditions, and connectors of generations. So it's important to not just capture those recipes that are important to our families, but really tell the stories behind those recipes. So where am I going to find these recipes? Where might they be hidden? So some places you can find them are old cookbooks and recipe boxes are probably the number one place that I find them when I'm searching for them for my family. And what I love about these is you might find an old cookbook, but I think the one to the right of that, handwritten, kind of goes hand in hand with the old cookbooks. I know my grandmother stashed all kinds of handwritten recipes and notes inside her cookbooks and her recipe boxes. So make sure you're looking for all of those little scraps of paper that you might find that are home to those ever important recipe memories. I mean, I've even seen them, she's written them on old envelopes before that she captured a recipe. So make sure you really dig through those old cookbooks and recipe boxes, find the handwritten ones. Don't forget newspaper clippings. I know my husband's grandmother was very prevalent in baking at our 4-H county fair. And so I would oftentimes find her recipes and baked good things in newspaper clippings from when she had them featured at the fair. And then don't forget by memory. I think so often we have those family members that have those cherished recipes just in their mind. And it's easy for them just to whip it up and they don't have to have a recipe of any kind written down. But that's important for you to have it written down for when they are no longer with you. I think about my grandmother. She was that way before she passed away. There were so many recipes that she could just whip up and knew what to add to them. And so having those written down is very important. So make sure you ask family members for those. My favorite is just adding those stories behind the recipes. It's not just the recipe, what story goes with it. So some things to think about. Every recipe has a story. Who made it? When did they make it? Was it for special occasions? Why is it so special? What about it made it special to you and your family? So that's one idea to help you with the story behind a recipe. What are the memories behind the meals? Were there meals or recipes that were made for certain holidays or special occasions, or were they just everyday moment kinds of things with recipes or everyday recipes? So think about that. What about going beyond the ingredients? Think about family anecdotes, things that people say about those particular recipes, maybe certain cooking traditions that go along with the recipes, and any cultural significance they might have to your family. And finally, think about the list of ingredients. Are there secret or unusual ingredients that go with this particular recipe? I think it's important to note that, especially if it's something unusual or it's going to have an ingredient that is a little bit more difficult to find. I think that's a great thing to note when you are creating your recipe. So what about photo ideas? I love having photos to go along with my recipes, some kind of photo, because the photo is what gets people to read the story behind it and the actual recipe itself. So what are some ideas? The first one is the obvious one. It's food. Take a picture of that particular recipe once it's finished. And that's one idea. But beyond that, think about maybe taking a picture of the recipe card or the recipe itself. And we're going to do one of those together today. Maybe think about taking a picture of your family eating that particular recipe or cooking it together. I also like to do an ancestor picture. So maybe you have, if you don't have a picture of the actual recipe, maybe you have a picture of the person that made it. And then think about heirloom utensils and bakeware. What are some things that maybe you use that have been passed down to help you make those particular recipes? So I think about a rolling pin, is something that you might have. I've got some of my grandma's bunk pans. So think about different types of utensils and bakeware that are sentimental to your family that you could use for photos for those particular recipes. So let's bring that cookbook to life with Storied. How am I going to do that? Today we're going to talk about how do you add a recipe, how do you share and collaborate with others, and then creating the actual cookbook itself. So I'm going to hop out of the presentation and I'm going to head over to Storied. And I clicked on my homepage and my story feed so you could see right at the very top, you're going to see one of the recipes that I've already added to my Storied account. So this is one. If I want to start a new one, I can do that a couple of different ways. I can click on my stories here to add one, or I can say tell a story here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And what comes up is our story creator. And this is for telling just traditional types of stories. If I want to do a recipe, I'm going to come up here to the drop down and I'm going to click that and I get recipe. And I want you to notice how this part here changes when I click family recipe. It has more of a recipe format. So I can add background about my recipe, kind of the story behind it, and then you can see ingredients and directions and so on. We're first going to start with adding media. So when you add media, you can add photos, you can add audio files, you can add PDFs, and every recipe could have up to 100 items. So you can add a lot of media to each one of your recipes. So we're going to add that first because I love to add media, and I'm going to add it from my scrapbook. And I'm going to pick this recipe card right here that I've already uploaded. So here it is. I can resize it if I need to, but I'm not because this looks perfect. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to start putting in the information about my recipe. This one is for impossible pie. And what's really nice is if you have that information on another document or somewhere else on your computer, it's easy to do a copy and paste to the Storied family recipe format. And you may have to do a space or, if you want to make something bold, italic, underline, we have different formatting tools here that you can use. So I'm going to add my ingredients, and again, I'm going to copy those over, and the ingredients are going to come over as a bulleted list. And you can see here I have to clean it up just a little bit, but it's nice. I don't have to type everything in again. And then I'm going to add my instructions or directions for it here. And this one you'll see it did not come over exactly the way I wanted it to. And so I'm just going to highlight these and I'm going to make this a numbered list. So there are my directions. You can also add additional details, a location or date if you want to. I always like to put some kind of note. This would be a great space when I talked before about how if you have an unusual or a secret ingredient, you could put that here. You might tell how many people this serves. So that's your information for your just kind of additional details. So I have everything done that I want to do. I'm going to click on next. And this is where I can put in whose recipe this is. So I can tag people from my family tree in the recipe. And I can mention anybody else that was in the recipe if I want to add them. So I'm going to add a couple of different people here. Again, I could tag them for my tree. Categories, you are going to have the recipes highlighted automatically, but if you don't want it, you can just click on it and it goes away. You can have multiple. So if you want to add multiple categories, this is really nice because you can sort all of your recipes together if you keep it as a recipe. I'm going to click on next. And then this is going to ask me how I want to publish. So this is what one part where I was talking about if you want to share with others, you can share and collaborate as in your group. So you might share a recipe to a group that you're in, and you can see a couple of groups that I have. I could choose both if I wanted to, or neither. And then you can choose if it has public access or private. So I'm going to keep mine public, and then I'm going to say done. And this next pop-up is going to be, hey, do you want to share this story with somebody? And so this is really nice. We have a couple of different ways for you to share instantly. You can copy this link and text it to somebody or email it to somebody. You can copy the QR code and they can scan that to the story, or you can also share on Facebook or X, Twitter. So those are great features if you want to share those out quickly and easily. We've made it just so that you can do that just on the spot, super fast. Okay, so that's about sharing your story. So we've created a story. I've showed you how you can share it with groups. You can share it with other people. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like to put that all together into a book. So I'm going to come over here to Storybook Studio, and I can see some of the projects that I've already started, and I'm going to view all of my projects. So I have lots of different things that I've already started. You can see what the covers look like. You can see how many stories / recipes you have in each one. And then you can tell the last time somebody was in here and edited it. You can continue working on a story that you've already done, or you could start a new one. And we're going to start a new one so I can show you how quick and easy it is. The one nice thing about our storybooks is you can mix and match a book with recipes and stories. So if I want to have like a group of recipes, but I also want to have some ancestor stories included in there, I can totally do that. So here I'm going to start with a template. You can always start from scratch, but we have some templates in here for you to use. I'm going to do recipe, and it gives you some details about what that is going to look like. I'm going to hit continue. And now you are going to set up your project. And this is really the only thing you have to put in is your project name, which is going to be the title of your book. Taste of Home is what I'm going to call mine. You can also do subtitles, and I'm going to say Honnert Family Recipes. And again, you don't have to do all of this, and this is customizable once you're finished with adding your recipes and stories. So you can always come back to this. So that's where I'm going to leave it right now. I'm just going to do a title and subtitle, and it's white, so it's hard to see. Maybe I should make it a little bit of a color. There you go. And I'm going to click on continue. And again, for that step, you really only have to include your title to get started. So here I am in my project. And what are some things I can do? We do have some prompts that if you want to tell a story based on that prompt, you can do that. But what we're going to do is we're going to add our recipes. So I can go either to add my first recipe or add a recipe here. You could add a new recipe, one that I'm starting over with, kind of like I did just a few minutes ago, or I can add from recipes that I've already done or recipes from groups that I'm in. But we're going to do add my recipes. And I'm going to choose, these are just radio buttons here that you can choose which stories you want to include. Right now, because I'm in a recipe book, it is only showing my recipes, but I can also here do story type and say I want to do stories and recipes so that I will see more options if I wanted to include, again, maybe a story that I've written. So I'm going to, once I've chosen my stories, I'm going to say done. Now I can go out of here, this auto saves, and I can go out and come back in if I want to add stories at a later time. The next step that I would do is sort my stories, and this is super easy. So I can just drag and drop them in any order that I want. That's how I organize, so super quick and easy. And then my next step, and basically the last step, I'm going to look at my cover again, and this is where I can change my color of my cover. I can change the title, and it immediately types it and shows here kind of in real time what your cover will look like. You can add a foreword, you can add a photo. So if I wanted to do a photo from my scrapbook, let's say I wanted to choose this one. This is going to do, I can crop my photo to however I want it to look. This is a half page. You can do full page or no image. And then your next step is to continue, and you're going to get a preview of your book. So it's going to do an interior preview of all of your stories and what that's going to look like. I'm not going to take the time to let that generate. Just know that that's kind of your final step, and then you would order your book. So let's pop back out over here. So we talked about how you add a recipe, how you can share and collaborate, and then creating the actual cookbook at storied.com. Let's go to, I've got a couple more things just to kind of talk about. First off, let's talk just some recipe book inspiration. There are so many different ideas of things that you could do with a recipe cookbook. You can have themes, you can do family and beyond, and I'll give you some ideas for each of those. So with themes, think about, you could create a book that was all holiday recipes. You could do birthday recipes or special celebration recipes. I think about when my niece got married lots of years ago. I ask other family members for recipes to put kind of in a cobbled together kind of cookbook for her. This would have been perfect. So if you got somebody that has a bridal shower coming up, having everybody submit a recipe, and then you could create a special bridal cookbook for the bride to be. I also like the idea of doing time periods. So maybe you have a cookbook that is all about recipes that came from the Depression era or during wartime. Maybe Sunday suppers. So maybe your family has a tradition of having dinner every Sunday, and you could put together a book of all of the recipes that you use on Sunday suppers, and then a taste of a country or region. You might do a taste of Italy, if that's where your family's from, a taste of Germany. I'm from the Midwest, a taste of the Midwest. So different themes that you could do to pull together all the recipes for a cookbook. And then think about other ways that you can use it. So obviously a family reunion is a great way to come together with different family members to have them submit their favorite recipes, and you can have a family reunion cookbook. Think about, maybe you have a cookbook that's a specific ancestor, so it's all of your grandmother's recipes. Or maybe you have one that's a recipe for every relative. So everybody on my Honnart side, I get a recipe from them and create a Honnart family recipe book. Maybe clubs and groups that you're part of. You might think about doing a recipe book for faith communities and even historical societies. So lots of different options out there for the different types of cookbooks that you can put together and create them, compile them at Storied.com. I want to leave you with just one thought. I found this quote and I absolutely loved it. Recipes are precious because they contain not just lists of ingredients, but fragments of our history. That was Sarah Burr that said that. I think that's a great way to wrap this up. Go out there, find those recipes, start adding those recipes to your Storied account so that you can create beautiful cookbooks that are going to last for generations to come. Good luck with your recipes, and thanks for joining us today.